I'm very pleased to be interviewing Jeremy Kagan, who's CEO and founder of Pricing Engine. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for asking.
Well, let's start with your background. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, when I founded Pricing Engine a couple of years ago, I had been previously with Sony Music in the global digital business. So I helped run the global mobile accounts over there, and that was a really kind of exciting job. I worked on things like the Jimi Hendrix phone and things internationally that allowed you to buy a phone that came with music. But my background is pretty much all over the place, even though that's digital. And prior to that, I ran strategy at a digital agency called Moda Media here in New York. I've also been a strategy consultant and even worked in politics on Capitol Hill. In fact, you wouldn't know it to look at me, but my involvement in the music industry also had me managing punk rock bands. And even though I'm a dad of 3 small kids right now, I was on the Warped Tour when I just started dating my now wife. So it can go in a lot of different directions. I went to school at University of Pennsylvania, and then after a few years in the workforce, went back to graduate school at Columbia Business School, where I now teach digital marketing. And at the time, I knew the internet was going to be some very big thing in our lives, and very much wanted to be in New York, where I felt the advertising industry was going to be key to supporting the economics of the internet down the road. And with a few fits and starts, it's turned out to be a really good decision. So now I teach digital marketing and bring a lot of companies into class to speak, to be project companies, and it's quite exciting.
Jeremy, you were involved in the music industry at a time of great transformation. What did the music industry do wrong, and what did it do right?
Interesting. Well, I worked at Sony Music for a couple of years, but I've been involved in music on the booking side, working with bands for many years, and I actually had an internet music company in the 90s doing custom CDs. And one of the things that we realized very early on is when you only have a few players that can really make or break your business as a digital company, it really is a difficult thing. So for example, right now there's really only a few major labels. There's Sony Music and Universal. And if you don't get one of those guys to agree to work with you, you don't have enough music to have a true music company. So structurally, the music industry has always been in a difficult place across the board, not just in the digital terms. There's only a couple big players, a lot of lawyers, and very difficult to do deals. From a digital perspective, a lot of the decline in music can actually be explained very simply. And it's just that if you could buy just that single you like, why would you buy the whole album? And the industry got away for a long time with selling you the whole bottle of wine, as somebody said, when you only wanted a glass. And whether you believe or not that the album has a lot of good songs on it, certainly we all prefer to buy a la carte. So most of the decline in sales, a large proportion of it, can be explained simply by the fact that now we can buy just the songs we want. Also, this is an industry that's been convicted twice for collusion on prices, twice for bribing radio stations to play their music, and they're banned for cooperating on things like pricing and everything for future endeavors because of this. So they haven't really had the ability to react quickly, nor the desire. And it really took Napster and this sort of writing on the wall, and Apple, which wasn't very large in terms of market share at the time, to have them say, hey, what the heck, let's give it a try and try this iTunes thing. Maybe the iPod will be something. And the iPod, of course, was a fabulous hit, led directly to the iPhone, led directly to Apple's dominance in music in many ways today. But unfortunately for the industry, a lot of it has to do with everybody individually knowing where the industry is going, but none of the high-paid people and none of the contracts allowing people to make decisions that were good for the industry as a whole.
Do you think that there's a comeback for music the way it was, and do you see these lessons not being learned by other media? Where do you see it playing out?
Well, I think music has a lot of problems that the artists don't like the labels, and the labels don't like the digital companies, and the digital companies don't respect the artists or the labels in the way that they used to make so much money and things like that. I really think that a friend of mine at one of the record labels said that the music business is just fine. It's the record business that's in trouble. So that's one way to look at it, because when artists go on tour, when they're selling merchandise, they still do pretty well. And in fact, on video, etc. I think what we're seeing right now is it's always darkest before the dawn. We've got Spotify, Pandora, and all these other great ways of streaming music and consuming music anywhere we go, including in your car. So we're hearing and listening to more music than ever before. We may have left the age of selling 10 million records being the mark of a superstar. Now, a lot of artists, and Taylor Swift among them, will complain that, I'm not making as much money, but really, is it 10 million or 5 million the right amount for an artist to be able to do what they love every day? There's a difference in music than many other media in that we consume it very differently though. So I don't want to compare too many things. I mean, for example, you may have a workout tape and you listen to the same 20 songs every day. You wouldn't watch the same Seinfeld episode every day, even if you loved it, or any television. Even your favorite movie you've probably seen a few times. So it's a very different way of consumption. So while media can learn a lot from the music business, they really need to take it also with a grain of salt. And remember, for example, video, for all the trouble Hollywood may be in the way they finance movies, in the way they distribute movies, which have traditionally been based on geography and the natural limitations, those are gone. People can now digitally distribute everything easily. But at the same time, it's always been an industry of experimentation in financial models. They've opened up new windows constantly, everything from DVD to video on demand to pay TV. So I think it's a little bit more of a flexible industry. Where I see it going, quite frankly, is it's much like music, where it went from a concentration forced by the fact that there were 2 big radio companies and 4 big record labels. So it was possible to force people to listen to music and build these superstars. We're seeing a much more eclectic base. And it's a continuation of a trend. There used to be 3 television networks, and a show that was very, very popular might have half the country watching at any given time. Now a hit show can be less than 20% of the country, and there's literally thousands of channels if you count YouTube, and you should count YouTube and everything else. We're seeing ads in the subways now for YouTube stars, just like we used to see for new cable channels back in the day. I don't think that's going to stop. I think what we're going to see is we've seen kind of a modularization of the content production, which can be done with the kinds of equipment we're using today. The quality of the story writing and the creative, which is always in the hands of the talent. And really, how do we distribute and monetize this? And that's always going to be where are the big audiences. And YouTube is one of the places with the big audiences today. So I think there's definitely a cautionary tale, but everything is, the devil's always in the details.